Hello friends, today I'm going to show you how we can use ADO.NET to find records by ID from an API. That's using .NET Core. Okay, previously we had discussed about fetching the total records in the index action, like the list of data, and also adding a record using the create action method. Now we are going for finding an ID, finding a record using the ID. So for the people who are visiting this for the first time, you have to create a new project as web API, and then moving forward, you would find it as a blank project. You have to add a controller section that is students controller, and this is a web API controller. Whenever it shows you the type of controller, just do not select normal controller. It's an API controller, so that you see these two things on the top, and your controller must inherit from the controller class and not the controller base. Few nuggets you need to take care of. I'll show that. Okay, so these are the few nuggets that you need to take care of. And app settings.json will have your connection string. This is my connection string. Program.cs should be configured like this. Just one thing, like builder.services.add controllers with views.add newtons soft json. This is for serializing and deserialization. Rest of the things remain same. If you are using an ID, then you would be using a authorization, like login and logout. The authorization and authentication both would be required, so you have to add a authentication as well. But if it's just a normal one, then that much is required, and you have to inherit these namespaces. Also the model class. Let me show you the model class. So this is the model class that we have here. Though we don't need a model class, but uh, this is required to do some operations in the uh, controller section. That's why we created that one. Okay. So initializing the connection string with the configuration object. So this is the configuration object which is linking our connection string with the operation that we are doing here. Now, initialized with connection string, we have a data table which is the object of dt. Now the connection string is opened, and we select. You can put in the column names here when you have a huge database, or if you want to optimize the database, it's good to use column names here instead of a star, because this is going to fetch a huge amount of data, and that's going to take some time. So fixing the column names is better, where id equals to the id that we passed from our API. Now connection string is the parameter. So after opening the connection string, we have a new object for the adapter, and we are binding the command with this adapter, filling the data table using the adapter, and then checking if there are any rows in the data table, which means that when it's trying to fetch record using this ID, if something has in the data table, then it will the rows will be counted at more than zero. If not, then it will be a zero. In that case, we will return a JSON that nothing is found, and if it's more than zero, then it will um, give us the data. Okay, so this is just going to show us one row of data, so we are not using a for loop. And if anything comes up with the connection or the network, then we're throwing this exception with a status code 500 internal server error and the error message. All right, now let's run this program and see what's the output. Okay, now let's try to find the ID, try it, and let's say some ID which does not exist, and what happens? Reaches our controller action. So you can see that it will try to bind the rows, and it will see that no rows has been obtained. So it will go to the else part, and it will send us the not found message. As expected, it's showing us a not found. If there is any data, it will give us that data. So for example, let's go to 2009 and we execute that. As expected, it gave us the result of that uh, ID. and we found that ID value. Okay. All right, guys. A few things. Let's just try to test the same thing in Postman and see how it works. Okay. While we have our Postman opened, let's try to copy the URL from there. So our URL would be find by ID, this one, and this is a post request or a get. I'm sorry, it's a get request. Just pass nothing in the body. Perfect. We got a hit from Postman. Continuing with that, it gave us our result. So for example, I'm passing something which does not exist. How does that respond? Not found. All right. So I hope, guys, you understood what we did and what happened. And if you want to see if this status code has an error, so let's just put something in the connection string and restart. Ready by now? Let's see. This should raise an exception. I'm hoping it to. Perfect. Okay, guys, so this is the exception, and we got a 500 internal server error. Okay, so this is the error that we received if we have any connection error or if we have an exception. And if you want to print a default message, you can put it here. Instead of this exception message, you can put in a different error here. All right, guys, so that is all for this video. Thanks for watching, and thanks for being with me. Stay connected, stay tuned until we have our next set of videos. Until then, happy coding. Thank you.